Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our latest episode of Diary of a CIO. I'm Sarah Pawson, the CEO of the Fruition Group. I'm joined today by James Eaton. Welcome, James.
Hi, Sarah. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Very quick intro to James before we delve in with our questions. James is a highly experienced technology leader with a deep-rooted background in the design, delivery and operations of complex IT systems. With a career spanning some of the UK's leading financial institutions, James brings a wealth of insight into the challenges and rewards of large-scale digital transformation. Newly promoted to CTO, your first CTO role, I believe, James, at M&G, who are a global international asset business. James was instrumental in driving forward the innovation through cloud, DevOps and automation at various different organisations, including Lloyds Banking Group and Skipton Building Society. On a personal level, outside of work, James is an avid Leeds United fan. Enjoys golf and has two young daughters, so plays the role of taxi driver on a part-time basis as well. So that's our guest this morning. Thank you again for joining us, James. And I'm going to delve in with some questions, starting off talking about your career journey, if that's all right. So You've been in the CTO seat at M&G now for just over 6 months. Your first foray into being a CTO. How's the transition been and what's been your biggest learning curve so far?
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. And yeah, just over 6 months, time flies. And I guess what's the biggest change that I've seen over the last 6 months when I think of my career path to get into this position? There's been a lot of kind of incremental steps and actually the move to the CTO role has actually been quite a big jump. I've certainly found over the last 6 months the focus on providing strategic leadership, ensuring that we're thinking about business goals, our clients and our customers and how we use technologies to enable them has been a real step up and focus point for me. A lot of my career as a technologist, it's been about the tech, it's been about building technology teams, it's been about deploying and managing technology, and all of a sudden it's like a switch has been flipped to really focus on business outcomes that drive tangible value for our clients and customers at M&G. And yeah, I think a really exciting change as well, because I get to use the technical background that I've got, but then I'm seeing a lot more on how we use technology to drive business outcomes.
Amazing. And I guess that is quite a shift in the roles that you've been doing previously that have been very technically focused. Have you kind of had somebody that's kind of mentored you through this process then? Have you got someone internally or externally that's helped you kind of step into that role where you're looking at things from a different perspective?
Yeah, I think I've been lucky throughout my career that I've always had strong mentorship from around the organisations I've worked in, whether that's back to my early days at Skipton Building Society, through my time with Pawson Lloyds Banking Group, or even now at M&G. So I kind of not necessarily had one dedicated mentor. What I do is look for kind of the attributes in the people around me, my peers and leaders, and kind of think, right, okay, how do I emulate that? What do they do well that I need to build on? More recently, I'm quite fortunate that I've got an exec coach who's really helped me over the last 2 years in preparing for that step up and that transition, thinking more about how I adapt the way I operate, how I stop just being a pure technologist and become a business leader. So yeah, a number of different kind of angles on the mentorship, but my approach is don't just focus on one mentor. It's take the best bits of a large group of people and perhaps, if you can, use a coach to then help stitch all that together.
Amazing. And was that coach something that you sought yourself, or did that come through your kind of natural progression route at M&G? Is that something they help provide?
Yeah, it came through the natural progression at M&G, and then it's not something I'd really thought about sort of going through my career. But equally, when I started working with the coach, it was really eye-opening, the kind of processes we've gone through, some of the exercises we've done to help me prepare for the CTO role have been really quite simple, and you find yourself thinking, well, that was obvious. But equally, you do
good
need
advice
that
always
kind of,
is, isn't it?
exactly. Yeah, you need that external kind of lens on what you're doing to kind of get you out of the day to day. But yeah, fortunately, that's something that M&G have provided and helped me to move up to this level.
That's incredible. And was there a kind of defining moment when you realised that the CTO path was kind of right for you, and was that a kind of obvious step that you wanted to take, or were you just kind of in the position at the time where a person was needed and there was a gap, or was it a bit more, I guess, contrived than that?
Yeah, but I think very conscious, and certainly very conscious in the last 5 years, or maybe a bit longer. I think earlier in my career, it was less obvious that I'd have gone into leadership, but I made the switch, or flicked the switch, probably 10 years ago, maybe a little more, where I'd gone from being a good technologist to actually really enjoying leading teams, building teams, setting direction. And it wasn't just about kind of the hands-on building and engineering technology. It was about kind of the outcomes that you can drive from being a leader. And then from that sort of point 10 years ago, I think every step I've taken has been a step towards where I am now. And certainly in the last 4.5 years that I've been at M&G, been really focused on building the attributes and capabilities to kind of get to the point I'm at now. So it's been, yeah, I think I've been focused on that objective and that career path and where I want to be. I'm been quite ambitious with it as well, and open that, yeah, this is what I want to do. What are the gaps? How do I achieve them? And then that leads into kind of understanding your blind spots and moving forward.
Amazing. And was there a kind of a crossroads where you kind of had to take one path over another, or maybe take a specific risk to kind of take that step up?
I don't think there was a specific crossroads in terms of getting to the kind of CTO role, but again, if I think of the career journey as a whole, one of the sort of notes that I'd written down when I was prepping for this session is the kind of whole idea of squiggly careers. It doesn't necessarily all go in a linear fashion of, yeah, I start here and I want to end up here and it's going to go straight. I think what's been really important is taking sideways steps for me within technology. But if I think of the time when I left Lloyd's Banking Group, I went from being customer side and I worked with Hewlett Packard Enterprise, so I was vendor side, and that was very much a sideways step. Very eye-opening in terms of what kind of happens on the flip side of technology.
Yeah.
And that then enabled me to come back into customer side, into M&G. So yeah, I think that kind of squiggly and sideways career is really important. That's something that's helped me move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good advice as well, because people often think they need to be on this continuous growth journey, either in their career or whatever, and it just doesn't always work like that, does it? There isn't this nice neat hockey stick
just
line.
I think the other kind of point to that is say yes. That's something I've always done, even when you're not sure if it's 100% right, 100% what's going to get you from point A to point B. Kind of say yes and take an opportunity, and don't be afraid to do that. And certainly I'm thankful for my time in a big organisation like Lloyd's. There was a lot of opportunity to kind of step sideways into roles and say yes to opportunities.
Yeah, that's good advice actually. Say yes and work out how you'll do it afterwards. There's always a way to get there. And I guess as you've stepped into more senior roles, you've really got to get out of the weeds and out of that day-to-day operation. How do you balance kind of immediate challenges that you might face in your role or across your team with driving longer term innovation?
Yeah, I think that's certainly something that I've focused on more since stepping in the CTO role. And what's critically important is building the team around you, making sure you've got diverse capability in your team, so you can trust them to do the job and deliver the day-to-day work, which allows you to spend more time thinking strategically for the next 18 months, 3 years. What do we need to line up to achieve or help the business achieve its objectives? I was going to say I'm lucky, but I'm not. It's by design. I've ensured. I think that's one of my sort of skills is building high-performing teams. The team I have around me is high performing. They support me on a daily basis, and I can trust them to deal with the day-to-day operations of running a technology shop. So that then gives me the confidence that I don't need to be all over everything. Yeah, listen, there are still things that kind of come from the side. You look at the substation that blew up near Heathrow last week. If you're running data centers in that area, it can be quite challenging. So you have to dip in and you have to make sure that the sort of exec leadership team around the business are aware of what's going on, the potential impact, and how you're dealing with it. The majority of my day is spent kind of forward looking, focused on strategy and how we move forward.
Yeah. And I guess looking ahead then, what do you see to be your single biggest challenge that you need to tackle as a CTO this year?
This year, it wouldn't be a tech podcast without mentioning artificial intelligence, but I think whilst I think we've probably gone into a bit of a trough of disillusionment around AI, where the value is, and will it really do everything that the kind of buzz said it would 2 years ago? This year's all about how do we recognize that value from AI, and a lot of that comes from making sure you've got your data and your insight to feed the artificial intelligence, and also looking at your business processes, making sure they're optimized and efficient, because otherwise you find you're automating a bad process, you don't really get the benefits. So there's a big focus on driving value from AI, both colleague productivity and business process transformation. And the other big thing for me is continuing to move M&G to be a 100% cloud resident business. So we will, by the end of 26, exit all of our on-premise data centers. We'll be fully in the cloud for all our services. That has a wide-ranging number of benefits for the organization in terms of cost reduction, improved resilience, improved cybersecurity, and access to innovative technology. So this year, how do we drive value from AI, but also how do we kind of get to a point where we've all but finished the job on moving to cloud to unlock that value?
Quite a lot.
Yeah, quite a lot. But like I say, I think the team I have, we're on track. We're kind of moving with those objectives. So a lot of my time isn't this year. I've got good confidence and good governance to make sure those things happen that I've just laid out. And then it's what's happening next year, what's happening the year after that is where I spend a lot of my time.
Amazing. So that was quite a nice seamless link onto AI for me, and just coming on to the kind of tech strategy ahead, really. Obviously, I know you're leading a strong push to embed artificial intelligence into M&G. What kind of value do you think this will unlock in the short term for the business that you currently work for?
Yeah, so we're looking at how do we create capacity and give the business oxygen. So the end outcome is improved experience for our clients and customers. AI is one of the tools that we've got in the box, and we believe there's a big opportunity to kind of create the capacity in the business, give every one of our colleagues more oxygen to help the business grow and move forward. That's going to be coupled with process design and transformation. We're a company who has a heritage going back 170 years, so you can imagine some of the kind of processes that are embedded into our operations. So in order to get the value, like I said, from AI, it needs to be coupled with process transformation and data transformation. This year, we've got a big focus on how do we drive colleague productivity using things like Microsoft Copilot. So every one of our colleagues has access to Copilot. That's going to help us kind of move forward and just create that little bit of oxygen. We then look at where can we drive transformation into the business process. We've had a lot of success in the last 18 months, both in our life and asset management business, deploying AI to augment colleagues to be more efficient and focus on high value work. And this year is all about laying the foundations and seeing if we can really evidence that capacity creation to our exec committee and then really push hard into 26.
I love how you describe that you're giving colleagues oxygen as opposed to replacing colleagues with automation and AI. And looking at the sector that you're in as a whole, in the kind of investment, savings, finance sector, what do you think is the biggest opportunity, and I guess the flip side of that, the biggest risk for the investment industry that AI presents, maybe on a longer term basis?
Yeah, I think the opportunity is faster, more efficient insight and optimization, automation of back-end processes. I think that's really, really clear and where we can drive value. The risk is, I think it's well publicized that AI isn't perfect. It has bias. it can hallucinate. It's not always correct. So the human in the loop is so important, certainly for us as a regulated company, but across the industry. We're not going to be in a point where AI is just completely running the entire organization. You need humans to be looking at the insight that is perhaps coming to them faster, but the human in the loop is critically important. So that risk around making sure we can stay on the right side of regulators globally, making sure we understand the potential impact of AI when we think about bias and hallucination. So big opportunity, but also big risks for us to think about as we take our proof of concept and proof of value and move them towards production services.
Yeah. Absolutely. And how do you keep abreast of what's happening in your sector so that you can make sure you're kind of leading the way in what you're doing with AI specific to the investment sector?
Yeah, I mean, AI, I'm pretty sure every night of the week I could go to an event around AI. So it'd be interesting to see the comments on how do you pick the right events to attend. So I try and look for, where there's high value peer networking at the right level. I think that peer discussion is critically important. I've certainly found that over the last 18 months, sort of building relationships with peers from other organizations. You usually find that you're broadly doing the same sort of things, and you either validate what you're going after or you can challenge yourself. So I think sort of peer networking is important, but also I use my partner ecosystem. So big partners into M&G, our big technology partners, making sure we understand what their 3-year roadmap is. Certainly, if I think about AI, that there's a real risk that you can build things and spend quite a lot of money on development in-house, and the next day Amazon, Google, Microsoft, IBM just released something you can turn on in your feature set. So I think there's going to be this balance of what do we need to build, where's their genuine IP and business value versus what will be commoditized by the sort of big players in the market. Yeah,
that's really good advice actually about that peer networking and getting advice from people that are in your shoes. And I think sometimes unless you're really proactively doing that, it can be quite hard to know where to begin, particularly when there are so many events. Let's take AI as an example. What's the best event that you've been to that has given you the right peer-to-peer, I guess, network when you arrive there? Because you never know till you land at these events whether or not it's good use of your time, and time's precious outside of work as well. I appreciate that. So it would be great to share with our listeners any really kind of good ones that you've been to or networks that you've tapped into that are really, really strong.
Yeah, so the IDC networks are pretty good. So I've been to a few of their events. I was at the CIO 100 event last year, which I won one of those awards. Shameless plug for myself. So
absolutely,
that really at the right caliber of people. The other area where probably one of the best events I've been to, and without sounding like a marketing plug, was Gartner's symposium last year. That was real sort of technology exec level information and insight.
Yeah,
I think. I spent sort of 3-4 days with them, and the presentations and the content and the peers who were at the event were absolutely top tier and learnt an awful lot there. So certainly the IDC events, Gartner have some real high quality events. And then we work quite largely with Microsoft, as a lot of people do. The big tech companies typically get it right in terms of making sure the right people are attending the kind of senior level events.
Yeah. It's really good to give specific advice to listeners, because people talk about networking and peers and support and having that kind of that locker room behind you, and it's if you don't have that already, it's like where do you begin?
Yeah,
I want to come on and talk about your team now, because I really love how passionate you talk about your team and recognizing the part they play in the overall picture at M&G, sorry. And you talk about them being a high performing team. Attracting and retaining a high performing team is tough, right? It's tougher than ever. What's your approach to building and sustaining high performing teams? How do you do it?
Yeah, I'm sort of high performing. People might come in and try and steal them. Yeah, I mean, it's critically important when you take over a new role in any organisation that you look at the team around you, because you can't do everything by yourself. Certainly at a senior level, you need diversity of thought. If I look at my team, my direct reports. Well, if I look at my peer group, I think about kind of looking around the room when we have our leadership meetings, that there's real diversity of thought, both in terms of kind of culture, gender, ethnicity. So you've not got a room full of clones, and I think that's important when you can all challenge yourself. Ongoing development is critically important, so you can't sort of stagnate and stop. But once you feel like you've got the right team, we all know technology moves fast, so continuing to evolve and develop and stretching yourselves is something we do. Yeah, so it's kind of hard to explain. There's this question you get asked a lot is, okay, how do you build a good team? How do you know you've got a good team?
Yeah.
And yeah, when it falls into place, it's really good. And you have to then try and think back of what specific things did we do to build that. I think it's a reflection of your own leadership style as well.
Yeah.
I'm very much hands off. I want a team that I can trust. I want a team that will just get on and kind of do things without me having to micromanage them. So you need to ensure you're employing people and building people who can operate. If someone needs constant guidance at a senior level, they're not the right people to be in that team. So a high-performing team, I think, is also, whilst there are obviously the books and the training, all the things you can do on, it's also quite personal to think about what do you need and what are your weaknesses? Where do you need balance? I'm quite on the kind of red side of the scale, the kind of motivating director, just get on and do it faster. So it's really important that the kind of blue characters that are in my team to say, well, actually, let's just slow down and let's think and let's be calm. So that kind of balance around the kind of personality scope is important.
Absolutely. And when you talked about making sure that there is ongoing development of individuals, that's obviously really important. And you're a great example within M&G of receiving that development and progressing your career and the executive coach and support that you've had through that. Are there any examples of how you do that with more junior team members who are maybe at the earlier stages of their career that maybe don't get access to an executive coach? How do you help them develop and progress?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways. One is obviously use the experience that I've had from working with a coach and take the bits that I can and play that onto my team. But then think about my peers, where there will be good mentors outside of my team for my team, if that makes sense. So how can I link my team with other leaders in M&G, be it in around technology, be it in the business, and get them that real exposure. So I think the answer doesn't have to be kind of dedicated coaching. It's supporting growth and mentorship wider. It's helping people understand the context of the business by making sure they're linked into the right leaders. It's allowing people to grow. And I think, whilst it would be sad to see any of my team leave, I'd also encourage it. If one of my direct reports came and said, look, I've got an opportunity in this other team within M&G, I've got an opportunity externally, I'd absolutely be a supporter of that and giving them the confidence that it's not just about sitting in one role and staying there for the rest of your career. Sort of taking those sideways steps, taking that squiggly career like I spoke about earlier is really important. And I think being open and honest, and I'm probably too open and honest at times, the team will say, but that kind of helps just kind of be warts and all, what the challenge is, what am I facing, help them to grow and understand the challenge that I've got as a leader.
You're a straight talking northerner, James.
I mean, that's quite interesting. One of the behaviours that we have for all our colleagues is tell it like it is. Being a straight talking northerner, that's my favourite. And my purpose is all about solving problems and creating meaningful difference. I don't believe you can do that if you don't start by telling it like it is. You can't fix a problem if you don't get all the facts out. And that's certainly, if you were to 360 my team, telling it like it is certainly something I roll on a daily basis.
Yeah, amazing. And I guess in your model, obviously you've got your internal teams that you work with, but then you also work with a mix, I think, of offshore and onshore external delivery partners, which is quite a sizable kind of, I guess, support network that you have. How do you lead across that blended model effectively? Thinking about different, disparate teams across different geographies, cultures, time zones, communication, all that kind of thing that you have to factor in.
Yeah, really important and something we look at when we do our sort of regular colleague surveys. How are the team feeling? I've got teams within M&G, both in the UK and India, and then I've got sort of large outsourcers who are based globally as well. One of the things when I came into, not sure the CTO role, but the role before it, I mean, there was quite a lot of sort of friction between the teams.
Right.
The first thing I did is, let's forget what badge or what our payslip says, who's paying us. We're one team with one set of clear objectives. So what I do at the start of every year, what I've done this year, I've laid out the 3 top objectives for the technology office in M to deliver our cloud-only ambition, to modernize our architecture and build our capability. And it doesn't matter if you're based in London, Sterling, Mumbai, Pune, or working with one of our suppliers. Those objectives are absolutely the same. So I think that shared goal is important. And then working globally can be challenging. I think you've got to invest time and effort. You've got to invest time to travel. So the team in the UK will go out to India. The team in India will come into the UK. And building relationships is so important. I think once you've spent time face to face with someone to build a relationship, working remote is so much easier. We invest in that to make sure we get the best from everybody globally.
Yeah, I really like how you set your vision out and shared that with everybody, regardless of level, position, or whether they're an internal or external supplier. So that message is really clear and consistent throughout. And that's really important. And I guess that often gets overlooked, right, with it when you're dealing with an external blended model of external partners. It's important to have that clarity.
Yeah, I want to be able to, I kind of want to be able to talk to anyone in the team, whether that's someone with an M&G badge or one of our suppliers, and have them tell me how the thing they're working on maps to one of my 3 top objectives. And if we can't do that, me and my LT have done something wrong, in my opinion. We're focusing on the wrong work that we're actually delivering, our top level objectives are wrong, and we spend quite a bit of time working through to make sure that isn't the case. And I'm confident that I could go and test that around our organisation. So, okay, any of our engineers or support staff, what are you working on? And actually it will map back up to one of my 3 priorities, and then they will ultimately map into our organisational priorities to drive growth and great outcomes for our clients and customers.
It's really good advice, and it's quite like obvious. How do you get the best out of people, regardless of where they sit in your business? And I guess coming back to what you said earlier about some of the advice that you've received from your executive coach, you kind of hear these things, you think, well, of course that's what we should be doing, but it's quite easy when you're in the mix of things to not think about these things. So taking that step back is so important. I really liked, as I said earlier, how you talk about AI giving your team oxygen, which hopefully gives them the opportunity to step back in their roles as well and think differently and have that freedom to be more creative or have more capacity to do more challenging things. How are they adapting to that? And are there any challenges that have come up along the way?
Yeah, it can be frightening. It can drive more automation. More automation can reduce effort needed in teams, and people have this fear that AI is going to come and take a job, which it isn't the case. Like I say, it's sometimes like getting more oxygen into smart people to come up with ideas that help drive growth or help improve client outcomes. So I think education is really important. We're teaching not just in technology, but the whole of M&G. How can they use AI? What's the value of it? How will it get the best out of them? To give an example, we've started running a number of promptathons and hackathons. We ran one in Mumbai a couple of weeks ago. We've got a number happening in the UK. That's getting the business and the technology colleagues to sit down, brainstorm, come up with ideas, and propose a solution using AI in the space of 4 hours. And we're seeing, albeit small value coming out of that in terms of what the ideas deliver, how it kind of maps to a process. The big value is people's mindset and culture change of saying, actually, I can use this to make this better. And if I don't have to do this thing, I can focus on doing these things that are going to be more strategic and drive more value. So I think that the challenge is lifting everyone up to a level where AI isn't evil, it's not the Terminator, it is something that gives you more oxygen and allows you to focus on what's really important.
Yeah, amazing. Great advice. Coming on to, I guess, your own personal growth and development. Great leaders typically keep learning. It's an ongoing process. Is there a kind of habit or a resource or a book or something that's had a big impact on your leadership style outside of your executive coach? Is there anything you kind of religiously turn to?
Yeah, couple of things. One is very cliched. I, as you said at the top of the call, I've got two young girls. Most of the time after work is spent taxiing around. So I've focused over the last probably 2 years of setting my alarm, 5 a.m., getting up and exercising, whether that's going for a run, going in the gym. I find that kind of extends my day effectively. It gives me the chance to kind of clear my mind, especially working in London 3 days a week. You can't go for a run even if you're from Yorkshire because you're just surrounded by people getting under your feet. So 5:30 in the morning, the city of London is actually quite a nice place to be.
Yeah, amazing.
So that's critically important for me is exercise and getting it done early.
Yeah.
The other habit I've kind of built over the last 2 years, much better at kind of say reading, but listening to audiobooks.
Okay.
I spend quite a bit of commute time, and I set myself a goal initially to get through 12 audiobooks a year, one a month, and then that's accelerated and got more. But I've found over the last couple of years I'm reading a lot more, both light reading, sports, autobiographies, but also books around self-development and building yourself. And that's had quite a big impact on kind of how I think. I think one of the latest books I read a couple of months ago was Let Them by Mel Robbins, and that whole kind of let them theory has just been fantastic of kind of changing my mindset when dealing with problems. So yeah, exercise early and reading more books.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm laughing because I can see like your golf clubs, your little putting thing, and your dartboard in the back, and some various bits of gym equipment. I feel like that's your kind of safe space.
Yeah, I throw a few darts just to clear my mind. That's from my daughters. So
Oh,
I've been in London this week. They've been in on the putting mat. So yeah, I think sports is really important for me. It always has been through my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess even the best leaders have moments of doubt. How do you kind of personally manage any uncertainty or self-doubt particularly when you're in a high stakes situation or a high pressured situation, which ultimately you will be?
Yeah, how do I manage that? I think if I think back a few years, I probably suffered a little bit from imposter syndrome. Certainly working in FTSE 100 companies, but based in London with a Yorkshire accent, you can stand out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
And that then kind of drives into a little bit of, should I be here? Am I the right person for this job? And I think I touched on it earlier. That's something I worked with my coach, and he sort of brought it back to being evidence-based. Have you got any evidence that you shouldn't be here? Any at all? I know I can't think of anything. And have you got any evidence that you should be here? I've got all these things. Is like, that's that problem solved then, isn't it? So I think just stepping back, sometimes the kind of the voices in your head of should you be here? Are you good enough? Can you achieve that? And then stepping back and thinking, okay, where's the evidence? Is there any evidence that I can't do this? And the answer is typically no, there isn't. And then is there any evidence that I can do this? It's like, well, all these things.
Yeah.
So that really, really helped me. And that was one of the things that was so blindingly obvious and simple, but really impactful of make a list down the things that tell you can't achieve something, very short, if anything, then list down the things that tell you you are and you can achieve something. You'll find it's quite long and reinforces the reason to do something.
You've really emphasized for me how important it is to spend time working on yourself. If you want to get to a senior level with any organization, regardless of whether it's in tech or not, and having that reflection time to think, and obviously your commute's giving you that, which there's got to be some praise to being away from home, right?
Yeah.
But just the importance of doing that, and so few people have the time. Do you kind of make time to do that in your working week, or do you find that you're just lucky because you've got that train ride home and it gives you that time to listen to an audio book, or is it when you're on your run at 5 a.m. that you're thinking? Or
yeah, I don't necessarily make times to job my working week. It is flat out. I do try, and I'm quite looking kind of how I manage my diary. I do always make sure there's thinking time, so it's not back-to-back meetings. That's important. The kind of exercise, running is just pressing reset for me. Going for a run is I don't think about work. It's just where everything kind of empties out my head. So that always helps. I think that making time for yourself and not feeling like you need to be in meetings all day but you do need to be adding value to the company over a prolonged period of time, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. When you realise that, you perhaps feel less guilty that, you know what, it's lunchtime, I've been flat out since 8 o'clock this morning, I'm going out for a run, or I'm going out for a walk, and making that time to kind of think and reset. I think the more you learn, the less guilty you feel about that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
I think certainly more, when I was more junior in my career, you kind of felt you had to be at your desk and be seen to be doing.
Yeah.
When as you become more senior and you step into leadership roles, you're not measured on what you do hour by hour. You're measured on what you deliver year by year. How are you helping the company to move forward? How are you helping the business to meet its objectives? And you can't do that if you don't create space to think.
Yeah. And coming on to thinking about people that might be watching this podcast or listening to this podcast, hopefully there's some aspiring CTOs that, you know, were in similar shoes to you 12, 18 months ago. What's the one piece of advice that you'd give to someone who's aiming to step up into a C-level role?
The one piece of advice, it's quite challenging. I think that there's, advice is something that accumulates over time, is what I've found. So what's the one thing that's got me here? It's really hard to define. I think stepping back and thinking about your career on the whole, are you ready for this? Have you got all the attributes? Think about your big successes that you've had. Probably more important, something I always talk to my team about, is think about your failures. I think people always say, oh, what would you change in your career? And the answer for me is absolutely nothing. There's been lots of big signature delivery. There's been perhaps not lots of failures, but there's been some pretty glaring mistakes along my kind of road to getting where I am. And when you step back and you kind of add all that up, failure is learning as much as the big successes, in fact, more important. So I think when you look at your career journey as a whole, think really honestly about the skills and capabilities you have. Look around those who are doing the role that you want to be in and figure out what they're doing really well. And again, be honest with yourself. It's really easy to kind of say, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But actually look at the people who are doing that, think about the attributes they've got and how you build them. So more of a, not necessarily a one-word answer, but I think it's a number of things that accumulate.
It's one activity, isn't it? We'll wrap it up as one activity.
Yeah.
So just before we kind of wrap up this session, which I've really enjoyed talking to you, by the way, we always ask each guest to leave a question for the next guest. And this is quite a provocative question, I'm afraid. This is left by one of our previous guests, not me. What's one decision that you have made as a leader that in hindsight you would never make again? And I'm going to soften it a little bit and allow you to say, or you'd make a very different decision.
Wow, decision in hindsight where I would make a different choice. It's almost impossible for me to answer. I just sort of touched it in the last answer that, and I was kind of, when I write my notes, I wouldn't. Why would you? Everything you've done to this point in your career has shaped how you get there.
Yeah.
So going back and changing one thing, you might not end up where you want to be, whether that is success or failure. So I think I literally can't answer it because, well, the answer is I wouldn't.
Okay.
Why would you? Everything that has happened to this point has shaped me getting the role I'm in and being the leader I am. So I wouldn't change anything.
Amazing. Good advice. Remembering that the bad decisions that you make often make you a better leader in the future as much as the good decisions. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Amazing. James, thank you so much for chatting to me this morning. I've really enjoyed hearing about your career, and that wraps up our session of CIO.
Thank you very much.